Hey, welcome back everyone. So we have a new section here on a really important topic, events in React. Now we've already touched on events. We talked about onClick, how to create click handlers, the tricky issue of the keyword this and having to bind, but trust me, there's a lot more to talk about. So don't skip this just because we saw how to do a click event. I promise it's going to be worth it. Let's begin with an overview of our goals for the section. We're going to start with talking about attaching event handlers. We've already seen onClick, but there are many more. We'll discuss common ones. We're going to do it in this video actually. Things like mouse in, mouse out, key up, key down, but also some weirder ones like copy and pasting events. Then we'll move on to revisit the lovely keyword this, the tangled web, and talk about method binding, but we'll focus more on options, other strategies for binding, where we do it, when we do it, pros and cons, and the impact that it can have on performance. So there's a lot to talk about there. Then we'll talk about another really important idea, passing event handlers down from a stateful parent to children components. We haven't done anything like that yet, but it's a very important missing piece in the puzzle to preserving our downward data flow. And then finally, we're going to talk about this prop key that React keeps asking us for. You might see it in the console. It says warning, you need to have a key on these. We haven't talked about it. We've been ignoring it. So that's going to come up at the end. So this video in particular is focused on the different types of React events, the different built-in attributes that we can use. So this will be review for the first couple seconds. We've already seen how to attach an onClick. So React has a bunch of other special reserved attributes that we can use to create our own event handlers. So for example, you can do things like onClick, on mouse over, on submit for a form, keyboard events, on key down, key up, key press. And right here, I have a full list that we can take a look at. We definitely don't have time to go over the majority of these. We're going to go over like 3 or 4, but they all work in a very similar way where we attach them using an attribute. We say onClick equals, and then you pass in a function inside of curly braces. So on focus, what else do we have? Form events, on change, on submit, on invalid, a bunch of mouse events, things for dragging, things for double clicking, regular clicking, mouse moving over, leaving, a bunch of things. We've got pointer events. I pretty much never use those. Selection events, touch events, UI events like on scroll, that one will come up. There's a lot of them. So if you need a reference, you can find it here, but you could also just look on something like MDN because none of these are unique to React. These are just sort of React wrappers for the existing events that we have in vanilla.js. So I have an example. Well, there's a couple examples. Here's a component called wise square, and we're going to add an on mouse enter event. So when you hover over it, it dispenses some wisdom, a wise message. So I have the implementation over here, class wise square. I have some CSS, and there is this method called dispense wisdom. We have an array of messages. It's not in the props for now. We'll refactor it later. And we pick a random index, and then we console.log the message at that index. So one of these messages will be printed out in the console. So right now, there is no onClick attribute, or rather on mouse enter. So let's change that. So here's my div, we have a class name, and we can just do on mouse enter. And then we pass in this dot dispense wisdom. And we don't execute it, as we've seen before with onClick, we just pass it in. All right, and now if I go to my app.js and make sure that I add one in here, wise square, there's no props or anything. Here's what we get. I'll open up my console, and as I hover, or my mouse enters, you see that we're getting some new console.log. We're getting not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Very wise. All right, so we're getting a different console.log, or most of the time. There's not that many pieces of wisdom to choose from. Okay, so that's on mouse enter. Of course, we could easily change that to something like on mouse leave if you wanted to. So now I won't actually get anything console.logged until I leave that div. And you could do onClick, but I'll leave it on mouse enter for now. Okay, so another example, I'm just going to run through a couple of these. I have this thing I'm calling annoying form. And this will be a form where every time you type a character, it alerts, it explains what you just typed. And this form is going to have a particular affinity for the star character, the asterisk. So if you type that, it's going to be very happy. Otherwise, it's going to be sad. So we have a text area. We're going to talk a lot more about forms, by the way, so don't think that this is the right way of creating a React form. But we can add in an on key down, on key press. There's many options. So down is as you hit the character. Key up is when you release, and key press is a down and an up, I believe. Let's do on key up, and we're going to set that to this dot, let's call it handle key up. Next, I'm going to define that function, or that method, handle key up, and we'll start by alerting you press something. All right, now app.js, I need to make sure I've already imported it, but I'm going to add in an annoying form. And now we have this annoying form, and as I press and release a key, you can see what I get. You pressed something. And again, it's really annoying. But more importantly, what I want to talk about is how we can get access to the event data itself. We don't want to just alert something every time. Maybe we want to use the actual data in the event. So we can pass in that parameter, call it E, call it EVT. Those are the two standard ones, but you can call it whatever. Let's go with EVT. And this event object, if I console.log, it's actually something called a synthetic event in React. It's a bit advanced for what we need to know right now, but this is a wrapper that React makes. All of the standard properties are there. In our case, we're going to work with something called key code, so we can detect what the character was that was typed. So you can see we have all of these different attributes in here. These all have to do with the event. So what I'm going to do is, remember I said that this form has an affinity for the star character? Well, that character code is 56. So I'm going to check if event.keycode is equal to 56. If that's the case, we'll alert, I don't know, something stupid. All right, something like that. I love the star character, and if it's not 56, we'll alert just boo. Okay, so a really dumb, silly example, but this logic is often used to detect if somebody hit the enter key, for example. Sometimes you want to do some special logic when that happens. Oh, I should delete this too. We'll get double alerts. Okay, so if I type J, I get boo, and if I type the star character, it says I love the star character. So any other character is going to give me boo. I don't know why I just did J again. That doesn't really help. But you can see if I type the star character, it works. All right, silly little demonstration, but that is key up. If I change it to key down, it's going to work very similarly, except as soon as I press the key down, which I have pressed a key right now, but I haven't released it, so it's not showing up here, but I have actually pressed it down. Now I release it, and we're done, and it shows up. Okay, so I'm going to go back to key up. All right, so I have one more demo, and this one's a little different. We're going to work with a copy event. So there's an event we can use called onCopy, and as I copy some of this text, we can add an event handler that will do something. Ours is going to be very simple. It's simply going to alert, stop copying me or stop stealing from me or something like that. So if we take a look at this component now, copy demo, come over here. This is what it looks like. As I copy this, which I'm doing right now, nothing happens. But if we want something to happen, we go to that section. Currently has some style that I've passed in. I'm going to do on copy and then pass in something like this dot handle copy, and then define it up here. And all I'm going to do is alert stop stealing from me and save. And what do you know? I come over here, I highlight something, I do Command C, or I can right click, copy, stop stealing from me. Now it doesn't stop the copy, right? We're not preventing that. There are ways, there's an API, an interface to the clipboard itself. So if you wanted to get fancy, there are ways to override that, to change, to add things into the clipboard, but we're not doing that. This is just an overview of this syntax, the different ways that we create event handlers. Okay, so that's pretty much all I'm going to show you in this video. I wanted it to be a survey of some different types of events, but remember there are tons and tons of these. Do not think that you're limited to the ones that I showed you. And some of these that we haven't covered are sure to come up later in the course, but the pattern is always the same. On some event name, camel cased equals, so you use it as an attribute and you pass in some event handler. All right, so next we're going to revisit that fun topic of binding, figure out why the keyword this is so problematic, and talk about some different strategies.